For some analysis now, we have with us in the studio Rick Noack, correspondent for the Washington Post. Good morning to you, Rick. Good morning. Does Cohen's guilty plea mean that the president broke the law?
Well, it certainly makes it more likely that investigators will figure out that he did break the law in case what Cohen said was in fact true. But whether that's going to have any legal consequences, that's a totally different question.
Okay, the legal consequence right now is the possibility of indictment for the U.S. president. How likely is that scenario?
Well, that scenario is not very likely at the moment because the Department of Justice has actually done a few analyses in the past, and they've always concluded that indicting or charging a sitting president is simply impossible. So you would have to have a prosecutor who's willing to take the risk to challenge that.
Okay. We've seen legal troubles for the president before and for his associates. I'm thinking of General Michael Flynn, one example. Is the Cohen case different than that?
Well, the Cohen case is different because it directly implicates the president himself. And that is, to a large extent, different because it could have legal ramifications, a legal impact beyond his term. It could, in fact, lead to criminal charges after after the end of his term. After the end of his term,
but not right now. Democrats have, in these kind of situations, especially with the Michael Flynn situation, raised the possibility of impeachment. It's way too early to talk about that, yet that is out there in terms of what the Democrats' strategic interests are.
Well, it is too early to speculate about impeachment, but certainly if the midterms change the political balance in Washington, and if the Democrats take the House, that becomes a possibility. At least triggering impeachment hearings would become a possibility. And in fact, there are certain Democrats who are already demanding this.
Okay, Rick, let's get our viewers the background on that second case that could put pressure on the U.S. president. And that's another former Trump associate. His former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, has been found guilty by a jury on 8 charges. The judge declared a mistrial on 10 other counts. Now, Manafort was convicted of filing false tax returns in connection with millions of dollars earned lobbying for Ukraine, failing to disclose offshore bank accounts, and 2 counts of bank fraud. Manafort's crimes came to light as part of the investigation into possible Russian influence on the 2016 election campaign. Well, President Trump commented on that verdict after landing in Charleston, West Virginia, where he attended a rally.
I must tell you that Paul Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
Okay, we continue the witch hunt, a term that the president's used quite often. Rick, why has the president defended Manafort, but made absolutely a lengthy defense there, but made no comment about Cohen?
Well, we know that he's been struck yesterday more by the news of Cohen pleading guilty than by the Manafort verdict. But also, there might be some legal obstacles here because those are 2 very different cases. You have a former one-time campaign manager, and then you have his lawyer, and there are different legal implications for defending those personalities.
Okay. What are President Trump's political options right now? You mentioned the midterm elections. They're coming up in November. Are they that much more of a higher stakes game for the political survival of the president?
Well, they could become that if the Democrats decide to make that their rallying cry. There are 2 options, I think. Either this could embolden Trump's supporters who consider all of those investigations deeply unfair, or it could embolden the Democrats who managed to finally rally their supporters behind themselves. So it's sort of unclear what kind of impact it would really have.
Okay, so it could fuel both bases, both the Trump base and the Democrats as well. How are both these cases likely to affect, and that's still out there, the Mueller investigation, what we just saw the president call a witch hunt, into possible Russian collusion on the behalf of the Trump campaign?
Well, the question here is whether those prosecutions and, in fact, the possibility of going to jail for more than 4 years in both cases would, in fact, result in both of them cooperating with Mueller and sharing additional information about Trump that may play into that very separate investigation. And I think that is what a lot of people involved in the Mueller probe are hoping for.
Okay, that there might be some statements in terms of sentencing, sentencing statements that could implicate the president.
Well, I'm talking mainly about the possibility of cooperation between Manafort and Cohen and the Mueller investigation, and that is still something that is a hope.
Okay, for the Mueller investigation. Rick Noack from The Washington Post, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much.